Hello, I'm George Malim, editor of Vanilla Plus, and welcome to today's Vanilla Plus Thought Leadership webinar. We'll be exploring how telecoms operators can profit by helping other industries transform. A lot of the conversation is about the consumer markets and the over-the-top threat posed by Google, Apple, and others. But significant money exists for telcos to tap into by addressing the needs of multinational corporates and single-country corporates, in fact, in a range of vertical industries. Today we'll seek to identify the best ways in which telecoms operators can profitably help these types of organizations. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Dan Baker. Dan is Research Director of Technology Research Institute, and Fergus O'Reilly. Fergus is Chief Solution Expert at SAP Consume to Cash, which is SAP's billing solution, and he's from SAP Labs in France. During the event, there'll be a series of polls in which we will ask you, the audience, multiple choice questions and come back to you with the results so we can gauge how we all feel about the potential of various verticals. There will also be an opportunity to ask questions to each speaker at the end of their presentations. So without further ado, I will pass the floor over to Dan. Dan.
Thank you, George. But one of the biggest challenges telecoms face these days is what to do for a second act. Act 1, wireless, was an extraordinary success. The only trouble is markets are saturated there. Now, don't get me wrong, we've still got quite a bit of growth coming in terms of smartphones and LTE, but telecoms still need to figure out what to do once these services become commoditized, like all services do. Many telecom people are placing their bets that the enterprise market is where the action is. Why? Because enterprise customers are willing to pay for a higher quality service, and they need special services that telecoms can offer them. And the thought is that some form or combination of cloud and machine-to-machine services will be the winner. Now, I've been making the rounds of the telecom conferences and reading industry news, and I must say that telecoms are not half as excited about cloud opportunities as the software vendors who are promoting them. Telecoms are cautious to jump into new markets that attract the likes of Microsoft, IBM, Apple, or SAP for that matter. And I think part of that fear, I'm sure, goes back to memories of the dot-com crash and how telecoms never really did succeed in the Internet services space. But in my opinion, there's another factor here. There's been too much focus on the cloud as an IT play, namely an opportunity to outsource enterprise data centers. I'm a regular reader of Information Week to stay current with people in the IT world, and the results of an interesting market research report appeared last year in that magazine. As explained in an article by Art Whitman, his Information Week research suggests that cloud computing will not be a disruptive technology, at least not in the short term. And what Art is referring to here is the finding that IT departments are not really eager to let go or redeploy IT employees so that data center cloud services will grow. And if that's the case, then the cloud computing in the data center is probably not as hot a market as all the press it gets. And certainly it's not a very high priority for telcos. But the cloud market that Fergus is going to talk about today is a very different market with a much stronger benefit for the customer. I'm referring to clouds as an enabling solution to allow companies in various industries to offer services over the web, and especially managed services. The outsourcing the data center cloud opportunity is really an efficiency play, but the enabler cloud is a mission-critical play. It's a must-have capability that other industries desperately need to grow and be profitable. So it's a service that these industries are willing to pay for. And let's look at one industry as an example and to see the opportunity. Okay, the printing industry, if you look at the major players there, they are traditional hardware companies, and most of their revenue comes from selling printers and toners and so forth. But today these companies are going to their enterprise customers and basically saying to them, look, I'll take over your printers, copiers, and scanners, and I'll manage that for you so you can get rid of all the desktop printers that you have at your company. And in that way, you can also get your printing done on more advanced machines remotely. And if you look at a company like Xerox, actually $3 billion of their $21 billion in annual revenue comes from the so-called enterprise document management market. And this is a growing trend. Xerox estimates this market is a whopping $130 billion opportunity for them. And the model here is that they charge you for the paper you print your documents on, and particularly if it's a color document, they will also charge you for the percent of toner cartridge coverage on each page because the color toner is very expensive. Now, these outsourcing models are running today, but they're not running efficiently because there's a lot of manual processes involved, but they're still running. But the plan, of course, is to get these models completely automated using telecom-style BSS OSS systems. And in this way, the user can check things in real time, such as whether or not the printing is being done in double-sided copies or not. Okay, then this change of business model is causing a massive change in the printer business model. In the past, they would have been selling directly through resellers. But in the new model, they are selling direct to the actual enterprises who are their customers and bypassing the resellers. And so this is a gut-wrenching decision to go that way because the business model totally changes. It's no longer upfront fees. You're getting fees for services over the length of the relationship, and that's something very new. And also, how do you run CRM and customer loyalty programs? That's also very new. And you're no longer selling printers and a new model to the customer every 3 years. So the effect of this is that it has really shattered this old business model to go to managed services. The billing relationship and the business model has totally changed. Now, the ironic thing about all this is that other industries are now looking at telecom and saying, I wish I could do that. They love the way telecoms are able to quickly turn up or turn down services. And the other side of it, of course, is to run the analytics and understand customer behaviors from the online service. And given where these companies want to go, they consider telcos to be light years ahead. And that's pretty funny because in the telecom industry, we're always beating ourselves up because we're not automated enough. But other industries look at telecoms and see best practices. Okay, to kind of summarize where we're headed here, there are basically 4 skill sets that are enabling this new market. Number 1, of course, is it's obviously delivered as a cloud service. Number 2, machine-to-machine technology, or M2M, is a key enabler of automating the machines after they've been given instructions from the user's web portal. Third, the service is fundamentally the outsourcing of processes at the business firm. And finally, billing and analytics is essential for offering the profitable services, charging for usage, and analyzing customer behaviors so you can fine-tune your offer. I'm not sure what you call this new service area. I mean, to call it cloud services or B2B or e-commerce doesn't really describe it very well. It's as if you are a key component in another industry's operation. So what if telecoms were to say, I can give you a platform to run your services capabilities in the cloud or regular hosted. I can give you analytics as a service and billing as a service, device management, and all the things that we do. Now, this is a very attractive offer to folks in other industries. So offering such a telco-in-a-box solution is a very new and exciting market. There's an opening up some real opportunities for telecoms that cut across many industries. And Fergus is going to get into this. I mean, it's healthcare, utilities, oil and gas, transportation, high-tech manufacturing, a lot of them. It's really any market where the industry wants to start selling a continuous service that's monitored through the cloud. So now I'd like to pass the presentation over to you, Fergus.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dan, for that wonderful introduction. And I think, yes, you've really characterized what we're seeing here in terms of the difference between talking about cloud as being an efficiency play and running various elements of an existing company's software landscape in the cloud. There's also then the whole host of internet startups that don't want to invest in a lot of infrastructure, and so what do? They're going to start running in the Amazon cloud, the Google cloud, or the Microsoft Azure cloud, or what have you. And here we're really talking about, as you say, something quite different, because we're talking about some new business processes for companies that are looking to go through fundamental business transformation, and that we believe that telecom operators are really the best positioned today to be the company that allows these other industries to go through that transition. So what's driving this? We see this as being really driven by the hyperconnected world. So you have really a technological change that's allowing this to happen. So that's a good place as I need to start. So you have lots and lots of these smart devices, all connected now by these wonderful networks that we built within Telecom. And there's a lot of effort going into putting intelligence in these various devices across different industries. What that has now enabled companies to do is to start moving to adding service layers, value-added services on top of the core devices. And what it means then is you're moving from a product-based economy to a product plus service-based economy. And we're seeing, across so many swathes of different industries, this move towards these consumable services, everything as a service, XaaS, and the emergence of this new application and services-based economy. And so within there, if you drill it down into the individual industries, it is very, very widespread, and it's amazing the number of industries that you can look at that are going through this level of change today. Many of the traditional service-based industries, we've seen, of course, major revolutions within telecom, but other service industries like financial services are also undergoing huge change today, be it through regulatory pressure, be it through lots of M&A activity, being it through their ability now to be a retail operation and have an ability to offer services to consumers that are not core banking services, but maybe just use the fact that they have the customer relationship they're looking to benefit from that. Energy as well is another sector that we're seeing is going through large change. The emergence of smart grids, smart metering is a wholesale change in how they are looking to position and sell their services. They're no longer selling you energy, they're selling you a level of energy efficiency or helping you reduce your carbon footprint. And so it becomes a very, very different business for them. And then we have examples within manufacturing industries. So these are the non-service industries, the product industries that are really probably going through the most change, where they are looking to move from this product-centric model into a service-centric model. And the example that Dan gave in the printing industry is a really, really good example. And maybe let's look at what other industries might see or might need. And I'd like at this point maybe to reach out to you, the audience, maybe turn back to George to tell us what do you see as being the major driver for you.
Sure, thank you, Fergus. The question is, which industry do you think might deliver the most revenue to your company in the next 5 years for M2M, cloud, and enterprise mobility offers? And the choices are automotive, financial services, healthcare, high-tech manufacturing, media and entertainment, public sector and mass transit, retailers, utilities, and that includes energy and water, none of the above, or you can just abstain from voting. And the question again, which industry do you think might deliver the most revenue to your company in the next 5 years for M2M, cloud, and enterprise mobility offers? And we'll just wait a few seconds to get all the results in, and I'll hand back to Fergus to comment on those. Great, I think everyone's voted. So
okay,
Fergus.
Great. Yes, so interesting. So I think we have a leader here in utilities with 35%, then followed by high-tech manufacturing close to 30% at 28%, and then healthcare, and then media and entertainment. I think more votes coming in, and now we're neck and neck with high-tech and utilities. I think what's interesting there is to see how low media and entertainment is, because for so long within the telecom industry, we've been looking at that as really being the way telcos are going to make a boatload of money is by selling media and content assets of others. And now we're seeing that in these new emerging areas of cloud, M2M, and enterprise mobility, it's really quite different. It's a whole different set of industries that we're potentially looking at. So thank you all for participating there, and that's very interesting feedback. If we move forward, and maybe let's look at an example within high-tech manufacturing. And here again, in this shift from product to services, and Dan mentioned this, if you think about the level of change these companies are going through, and I speak to quite a lot of product manufacturers who are going through this change, And what they talk about is, A, the fact that they're moving from their traditional business model today is, as Dan mentioned, a multi-tier distribution model. I take my product, I bundle up in big packages, I sell that to resellers and distributors, and they have the end customer relationship. So sitting in my CRM system is maybe some thousands or maybe tens of thousands of distributors and resellers. Those are essentially my customers, and I have very little connection with the end customer. So what they're now looking to do for a number of different business reasons is add connected services. So these are services that provide value to the end customer, be it a business or consumer customer. It allows them great competitive differentiation because competitors who just stick with a simple product model and haven't these layered connected services on top, they're missing out, and it then becomes a less rich value proposition for the customer. So that's one major reason to do this. Another major reason is customer intimacy. So as we mentioned, if my relationship is with resellers and distributors, I don't have that end customer relationship. So I don't have that feedback coming directly into my product. I don't know how my products are being used. The number of people who fill out a product registration card, let's say, when they buy a piece of a consumer electronics, is really, really low. We're talking about 4%, 5%. It rarely gets higher than that. And so there's all sorts of marketing campaigns to try and engage directly with the end consumer, but in reality, there's very little connection there, and that is a problem, particularly when you want to co-innovate in some ways with your customers. Everything is now moving to social media. You need to be very, very well connected to your customers, what they like, what they don't like about the product, and use that to improve it over time. So that's the overall situation we see these companies in. Let's look at perhaps some examples. Again, manufacturing company example, HighTech, consumer industries. Let's look at televisions. Now, that's an industry in which one of the problems that they've been confronting is that the product upgrade life cycles are getting longer, and that's due to the economic climate in some ways. It's also due to the quality of the products that have been put out, that they tend to last longer. So we're no longer buying televisions every 4 or 5 years. We're now buying them more maybe 7, 8 years in cycles. Immediate revenue impact to the manufacturers of televisions. And so they need to find some way to have new sources of revenue to fill in that gap. The other aspect as well is they're seeing a lot of new players emerging into this space. There's a lot of players addressing the home entertainment market. So a lot of the functions that a TV would generally provide in terms of getting that entertainment into the home, you have Apple TV that has a device in that space. You have the set-top boxes, of course, from all of the telecom players. A lot of people are trying to capture this services-based revenue stream for media entertainment in the home. And, of course, now these TV manufacturers want to see can they get a part of that as well. And then this other aspect around reduced support costs that frequently people don't think about, but it's actually a major cost driver for television manufacturers, is the fact that if they sell you a TV, they're getting support calls today, or oftentimes people will just box up the product and send it back and ask for a repair because they can't figure out how to connect the thing up correctly. They can't figure out how the HDMI connection works into their Xbox and how to get that connected up to the stereo system, and all sorts of problems are just because the product is more and more complex to deploy and to use and to extend and to get value from. So what they would like to do, of course, is actually support it over the network. So if they have this network connection in place, if it's now a connected television, which most of the high-end TVs today are, I can call in to support. Support can figure out what's happening on the device, and they can guide me remotely. They can update the firmware. They can do all sorts of troubleshooting. And then I have a better experience as a consumer and have one less TV returned into the manufacturer, and that is a huge cost reduction impact as well. So the technology, of course, that enables this is the fact that, well, everyone's now got broadband in their home. In most of the markets where televisions are sold, and I have the ability now to have all sorts of smarts on the devices. So we're seeing now, and you can see this with all the television manufacturers, they all have their offers for selling content, streaming video, downloading movies, etc., plus an app store model emerging. So I can have an application that will run on my television that will tell me the weather, that will give me a chat function or a statistics function when I'm watching a sports match, football or baseball or what have you. So again, an application style market. So that's an example from the high-tech industry around TVs. Let's look at one more example here, a little bit less high-tech. I hesitate to call it low-tech, but if we look at the building industry, that's an industry where, look at the equipment that it takes to construct a building today, and a lot of the value is really locked up in terms of the little more the electronics that go into the building. It's the sensor networks, it's the heating, the ventilation, the air conditioning equipment that goes in there. And that was a great growth market for a number of companies over the last 20, 30 years, and they've now reached a wall. A lot of those products are a little bit becoming commoditized. It's difficult to extract revenue. They were able to get growth in the market by consolidation. So they would buy up the competitors, but after a certain point, the market is consolidated, and you can't consolidate anymore without getting into problems with the monopolies and mergers commissions and things like that. So they are now looking again to try and get to new revenues. Otherwise, their product revenues are just going to be eroding over time. So they're looking into services. Another driver here is the customers are looking to consume in a different way. So it used to be that major corporations for corporate buildings would go out and they'd buy buildings, and they had huge portfolios of assets they held in major locations in major cities all over the world. That is now no longer a good use of capital, and so they're looking to move to a leaseback model. So they're selling their portfolio of buildings, they're leasing them back, and under this model, really what we're seeing is a change from CapEx to OpEx, which is very familiar to any within the telecom industry, which is a trend, I guess, that has driven a lot of telecoms revenues and the way telecoms are looking to buy themselves today as well. So in that move to OpEx, what they would like to do is have more of a service and less capital within the structures. And that then has this knock-on effect on the manufacturers where they need to follow this same trend. So then they saw this opportunity to move into management of the infrastructure for building remotely. So rather than just selling you a heating system or a ventilation system or an air quality system that would sit up on the roof and that would sit throughout the fabric of your building, and you would have to have an operator sitting down in the janitorial office in the basement who would be monitoring this and controlling when to open and close the shutters and when to turn on the air conditioning and the heating, etc. Now I can have this as a remotely managed service. So my building becomes wired. I have sensors throughout the building. I have actuators to open and close shutters. And this can now be a service that I buy. And what's really interesting here is that when I now buy this service, what's the pricing model? And what we see very frequently is that the pricing model is actually one of what this industry calls performance contracts. So you will see contracts where this former manufacturer of all this heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment will go into a large corporate purchaser, let's say maybe a school district, and they'll say to the school district, I will come in and install equipment throughout all of your locations in this school district, and I believe that's going to save you money on your energy bill because it's going to be more efficient, and I'm going to share those savings with you. So half will go back to the school district, let's say, and half to the manufacturer over time. So really what you're selling is efficiency. That's what they're selling, that's what they're pricing, and that's what the customer is buying. So big change there, again, in that industry. And if you look at it then, what this changes in terms of the business model, back to what Dan said, is actually quite significant. So the traditional way that these product-based companies, like these manufacturers, used to do commerce is that you would have these individual transactions. I buy a piece of equipment, like in the consumer space example, that television that I buy a television from Sony or LG or Panasonic, and maybe I come back 5-7 years down the road and maybe I buy another TV, maybe from the same manufacturer, maybe not. I had these discrete atomic transactions that happened rarely and had very little direct interaction with the manufacturer. And therefore, it was very difficult for them to cross-sell or upsell or to sell me more products because they lacked this direct and ongoing customer relationship. And now what we see these companies wanting to move to is what we at SAP called smart commerce. And the smart commerce is I'm now able to connect these transactions together. I have an ongoing relationship with my customers because maybe I have a subscription service, a subscription pricing, I'm metered pricing in the context of an overall customer subscription. And now I have this ongoing relationship with the customer, so I can influence them. I can do cross-sell and upsell. I can take partner products and sell through to my end customers. And guess what this looks like? This looks like any traditional, very dynamic services-centric model like we're very, very used to within telecom. This is the telecom business model, and it's really what makes the richness of the telecom business model is the fact that I have this direct customer relationship. I have interactions with my customers every day because they're using my services and making calls and downloads and consuming media every day. And that richness is really, other industries are very envious of what telcos have there. When I go into companies in these other industries, you'd be amazed the number of times the conversation starts with them saying, I want to be like a telco. They see telcos really as having best practice within this space. So what do these companies need? What are they looking for? First, they want these direct customer relationships. They want to be able to speak to their customers, bill their customers, monetize that relationship with their customers. And that's very new, and it's a very big change in business processes. Again, if I'm the TV manufacturer or the heating and ventilation manufacturer or the printer manufacturer that Dan talked about, today my customers are my distributors and resellers, and they're relatively low in number, thousands or tens of thousands. Now, I may be talking about selling to maybe hundreds of millions of direct end customers. Totally different business processes, totally different go-to-market, totally different way of managing those customers from my CRM system to my analytics to my accounting systems. The next aspect is the management of all of these devices. I have all these smart devices sitting out there in the field, sitting in businesses, sitting in consumers' homes. How do I manage those? How do I manage the software on them? How do I secure them? How do I provide services to them? I have pieces of software on the devices. I have pieces of software sitting in my infrastructure or sitting in the cloud. How do I coordinate all of that? That's a huge headache that, again, these companies never had before. It's entirely new for them. You have the same thing in utilities with smart meters, etc. A dumb meter in your house never needs servicing, essentially. It's designed to work for 20, 30 years. A smart meter will need software updates so it can have new capabilities. The next aspect is these services need to run 24/7. So I can't accept as a consumer or a business that these new value-added services can ever go down, because then credibility is lost for the provider of these services. So whenever you're having this service relationship, you have this need to operate again differently. How do I manage business processes? How do I manage my people in terms of my support technicians, etc., to make sure that there are no problems? These services stay up and they're there when the consumers need them. So again, a very big change from a product industry to a service industry is you're now working at 24/7, round the clock, and everything is happening in real time with the service platforms. And the last aspect is, as well, and that's not the least of the aspects, is the fact that in these services-centric business models, they're very, very different. Again, the most dramatic shift there is in the traditional product industries, where when you speak to a product manufacturer and they think about pricing, they're thinking about a SKU management problem, and frequently their biggest problems is what they call SKU proliferation. So SKUs are the product IDs, essentially. So if I'm making, networking hardware, I have maybe 10,000 items in my catalog, and I have then different country variations of those, and they have different price points and have different discount levels, and that can apply in different countries. When they move then to a services-based business model on top of that, it becomes a totally different set of issues that they need to worry about. It's, well, am I going to use subscription revenues? Am I going to use metered usage revenues? Is there going to be an installation fee or a setup fee for this new services? How do I balance all of that? What's the optimal way of setting up that revenue model for different customer segments? And then how do I roll that out globally? How do I deal with the tax issues globally, the revenue recognition issues globally? That becomes very, very complex in a services business. And if you look at these various elements that these new companies coming into this very services-centric or ex-AAS mode, what do they need? They need all of these things, and these are things that are core competencies for any telecom operator. Every telecom operator does all of these things today and does them, in most cases, really, really well. Dan mentioned that telecoms, we often beat ourselves up that we're not as efficient as we would like to be, that we're not doing as well as we would like in some of our core KPIs. But compared to where these other companies are coming from, telecoms really are, as Dan said, light years ahead. And so that's what we'd like to look at here is what do telecoms need to do now to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. So telecoms has already gone through this transformation. I think that's the key element to realize here is that we came from, I just arbitrarily took 1970 maybe as a starting date when the service was fixed line telephony, essentially generating the majority of the revenues, and now we all know it's a very, very much more complex world with different types of devices and the whole plethora of services that are sold. And we've gone from 160 million fixed line phones lines worldwide in the 70s to now having connected about 5 billion people all over the planet. Amazing, right? And I don't think we give ourselves enough recognition within telco for how much we have actually done and how much we have achieved. And that has been difficult to do. That's a huge growth rate to sustain. And that means necessarily that telcos have done some of the largest business transformation in history. I don't think there's very many other industries that can measure up to the level of transformation that has happened within telecoms. And if you look at that, there's been a lot of work across telecoms between one company to another through organizations like the TM Forum, the GSM Association, the 3GPP standards bodies, more on the technical side. There's a lot of work that has been done across industries trying to figure out how do we do this among ourselves? How do we ensure things like interoperability? How do we have standards for data exchange, for connection? It's really a wonderful thing that I can take a phone manufacturer from one brand and connect it to a network that is let's say the base stations and the network connectivity is provided by an entirely different manufacturer, and it all just works. And consumers or businesses don't have to worry about that stuff. That's because there has been a huge amount of work done in the background to make sure that all of this works together. That is something that many of the players who are coming maybe at the same value proposition but from a different angle, maybe from the IT-centric angle or perhaps from some of the new cloud-centric players, they are not at all as far down this road of realizing what some of the fundamental issues are. Is there an equivalent for the TM Forum or the GSM Association or 3GPP in the cloud services space? There's not. And a lot of the people who look at that space coming from a telecom heritage recognize that. It's standards-free in many senses, or the standards that are there are fairly low level and fairly light. How do I manage deploying a service that has to go and run across multiple cloud providers? How do I coordinate that? How do I provision it, deploy it, do fault management, quality assurance on it? Those processes are very, very embryonic in those cloud services space today. For core telecom services and service delivery platforms, they're very well established. We know how to do that very, very well. So again, we should be patting ourselves on the back for some of the core assets that we can bring to the conversation here with these new industries. And so I'd really like us then to look at what are the opportunities here. And above all, of course, when we're looking at some of these new industries and what they need, it's way beyond communications. Communications is a commodity. They assume communications and connectivity is there. They assume that there is ubiquitous broadband. The communications thing is taken as a given. But what they do need then is they want to take, for example, this television manufacturer needs to run their delivery platforms that they need to build, and they would like to potentially host them somewhere in a very, very reliable data center. And telecoms have among the most largest and the most reliable data centers in the world today. They'd like to run it potentially in a telecom cloud. They need the machine-to-machine connectivity that goes along with that. So managing these smart devices, the connectivity to those devices, the messaging among those devices, provisioning them, managing them, mesh networks out in the field, what have you. That, again, is a core competency of that I believe telecoms are best positioned to be able to provide. Enterprise mobility is another big focus area here again for telecom operators today, is allowing enterprises to mobilize their business processes. And then lastly, monetization and payments. these new industries coming into the services space, they need to make money. They need to have a monetization engine. And again, we believe that telcos today have great monetization engines if they could just find a way to open those up to these other players. And that's really, I think, the key here is realizing that today, all of these things that telcos do, the data center, the monetization engine, the device management capabilities, they're all turned inward. They're all designed to allow the telecom operator to run their own business processes internally. Whereas what these new industries need is they want access to those goods and services. They want access to those crown jewels of the operator to run them on their behalf for their businesses. And so this is really, in some senses maybe feels a little bit like, open heart surgery, because you're having to take everything a telecom operator does so well but does internally and turn it inside out. It now has to become a service that I'm able to offer to my customers. So take all of these great things that I do and build them into an overall platform that these other companies can come in and use to build their services that they're going to deliver to their consumers and businesses. And this, I think, is then the change the telecom operators have to go through to allow this really to happen. Some examples here. I wanted to take one example from the device management space. Sybase, whom many of you will know, is a company that SAP acquired quite recently. They have a product called Afaria. And the Afaria product allows you to manage mobile and remote devices, so manage the software on them, provision them, wipe the device when there's a security problem, all those types of things is managed by Sybase Afaria. Now, Cox Communications, so a telecom operator, a cable operator in North America, they have a very large employee population, but I think 20,000 employees, and 3,500 of them are field service employees, and they, of course, have mobile devices that they can use to go out in the field and check the cable boxes and check subscriber connections and that type of thing. So a problem for them to manage these devices, keep the software up to date. If they fall into the wrong hands, there could be network security problems, so they have to manage the security on those devices and do remote wipes and all that type of thing. They use Sybase Afaria for this, and they calculated, it's a nice case study there, that they have about $500,000 US in annual savings for those 3,500 devices. Nice, okay? Nice ROI there for Cox. But think about that capability of managing those remote devices. What would happen if that same telecom operator or another telecom operator offered that up to other industries? All right? Sony, for their TVs, they need this type of services. Xerox or Lexmark for their printers, in Dan's example, they need exactly the same thing. So rather than all those industries go out and build all of this themselves, why can this not be a service offered by the telecom operators who are already doing this today, but just happens to be doing it internally? So I think it's a nice example of the value that can be unlocked. If you string together, 100 of deals like this, you get a really, really nice revenue stream. You have a really, really nice business unit just right there. The other aspect I'd like to look at, because I know here for Vanilla Plus, we have a sweet spot in our hearts for everything which is billing and monetization. So let's look at the implications here from a billing and analytics standpoint. So if you take the various services that we're looking to monetize, so the cloud services, the machine-to-machine services, managing payments, like I throw the ability to do mobile payments into the mix here. That's a very interesting capability for a lot of merchants, retailers, consumer packaged goods companies as well. Everything that we can do around enterprise mobility. Those are the new services that we would like to offer to these emerging players in the new services economy. What I find somewhat frustrating here, to be frank, as someone who's been in the telecom industry for a while, is I feel we're not learning sufficiently from some of the mistakes of the past. So let me explain myself there. In the past, we, as telecoms, moved out of the plain old telephony service and got into the new services. We made the mistake of going very, very quickly and creating lots of silos that, then in the second phase we had to go and sort of integrate across these various platforms, because we had fixed lines separate from mobile and separate from internet services division and separate from my hosting business, and it was a mess. So every company ended up with, as we know, 30, 100, 200 different individual billing systems for each line of business. It was a mess. Here, in some ways, we seem to be repeating the errors of the past. So many of the large telecom operators, who are going after these opportunities and going gangbusters after them in cloud and machine to machine and the mobile payments and enterprise mobility, in many cases, they're very distinct individual business units. And even though, from my point of view, a lot of the drivers here are the same, a lot of the end customers are going to be the same, they're going to end up getting separate bills. So if, again, I'm a TV manufacturer and I want to host some of my infrastructure running in the telecom cloud, in the telecom data center, I also want to leverage maybe some of these device management aspects that are more on the enterprise mobility arm. I want you to help me with payments and monetization of my solution, and I want you to help me with connectivity, remote sensing of some of these devices out there in the field as well. I have to talk to your M2M division, so I have to have lots of separate conversations. It's not unified, it's not a unified offer. And when I start running my business with the telco, again, I'm going to be getting 4, 5, 6 different bills at the end of the day. Not a smart way to proceed. And so that's, I think, something that we need to have a little bit more of a holistic view on how we manage this. Other aspects to consider here, the issue of volume, as you can see here on the left. All these services are very chatty. They're all very busy. People talk about the move to, the 50 billion or 15 billion or whatever the big number is of the devices that we're going to be connecting for all of the televisions and the sensors and the printers and the air sensor quality sensors sitting in the building. A lot of transactions are coming in here. So that transaction flow then becomes the base, if we're talking about a billing solution, for what you're monetizing. A lot of this has to be real-time, as Dan said, because these companies are sort of expecting that from the get-go, that customers can get a very up-to-date view of exactly what's happening, what the value of those transactions are from an analytical standpoint as well. So a lot of real-time interaction is required. If we then move into the more monetization aspects of this as well, there I think some of the key thing that we need to realize is that what you're monetizing now is no longer a telecom service. It's no longer a telecom-centric transaction. It's not rooted in communications anymore. So back perhaps the example we gave in the heating and ventilation manufacturer, they're now selling energy efficiency for consumers. So what's the pricing model for energy efficiency for a service like that? It's going to look very, very different potentially in terms of its fundamentals and its dynamics to a telecom service like SMS or a voice call. Very, very different. So can my systems allow me to make that leap? Can it monetize in the way these companies would like to monetize? Because if I'm offering billing and monetization as a service, it has to fit to these different industries. So the multi-industry applicability, hopefully in a single platform, is very, very important. You also need this end-to-end reliability across the system as well. So we have within telecom, I think, good experience there in what works, what doesn't, what are the sources of errors, fraud management, revenue assurance. We know those disciplines really, really well. So that's, again, I think something that can be leveraged, that should be leveraged, because anyone turning to a telecom industry to say, give me billing as a service as part of your value proposition here, give me the payment and monetization piece as a service, they want that good end-to-end reliability. They're going to expect that it's going to be a very, very high level of integrity and that I can do all the audit and all the reports and I can pass all of those with flying colors. And the last point as well, on the right-hand side here, the business analytics, that's also something that we see very, very clearly. SAP is a very large player in the business analytics space and business intelligence. That's something that we see come up a huge amount in these conversations, because these new industries moving into these new service-based monetization models, they are breaking new ground in most cases. They don't know exactly where they're going. They don't know exactly how their business is going to behave and what the competition is going to do. It's a very, very dynamic marketplace. So having a very, very nice and tight connection between the monetization engines, the service delivery systems, and the analytics, so I can see what the customer behavior is and then adapt my business models very, very quickly that is also key here. I can't have cycle times that are measured in months. These companies are expecting to have cycle times that are measured in days. So this tight connection from business analytics, so I can have a very, very quick insight to action. So I can take the results of the analytics and pump that back into changes to my services. So what the customers were asking for, let me give that to them as quickly as possible, and then find out how to monetize what I'm giving them as quickly as possible. That is also important. And the last point to make here is also the partner centricity here. So telecoms, again, we've learned over the last few years the importance of these multi-sided models. And for all of these new industries getting into these new spaces, that's also a very, very important criteria for them. They're not just looking to monetize with their new end customers, these large volumes of end customers. They're also looking to bring partners along, either straight up front in the first phase of their business plan or as a phase 2 of their business plan. Back to the example that Dan gave at the top of the call of the printer document management business. So now all these printer manufacturers are providing managed services on my existing printer landscape deployed in throughout my office landscape, let's say. And what they want to then do is allow additional software manufacturers to be their partners, to ride on their coattails and deploy applications that then sit on my printers and that are monetized by the printer manufacturer. So an example might be someone might have a nice little application, a widget. It's really an app store style model, but or, a B2B app store, where I can say I have a nice piece of software that allows you to put your expense reports into your scanner and automatically then pump them into the system so I can automatically get reimbursed a lot quicker. That's a nice little widget I can deploy to my printer. The company then who owns the printer in the office space, they will then pay the printer manufacturer, who will then share revenue back with whoever built that piece of software or that widget. It's a typical app store model, just happens to be deployed in the enterprise space. So that partner-centric nature, that multi-sided nature of the relationship is also what these new customers are looking for. So those are some of the things that we are seeing as we are deploying these types of systems as being pretty important criteria that customers are looking for, and these are the criteria that we believe telecoms need to sign up to provide, and as they modify their systems, this is what is going to be required in the market. So that's our view. What we'd maybe like to do now, just to close, is to do another poll. So George, if you'd like to run this for us.
Yes, thank you, Fergus. So just before I ask the poll question, I'd just like to remind the audience that there's a Q&A opportunity at the end, so do feel free to type in your questions in the at the bottom of the console, and I'll direct them to the relevant speaker. So our second poll question is, what do you expect to be your biggest billing challenge in launching platforms to serve new industries? The first response is supporting pricing models for new services like M2M, cloud, and enterprise mobility. The second response is supporting multi-party, partner-centric models with revenue sharing. The third is handling the huge potential transaction volumes from billions of smart devices. The fourth is billing accuracy and revenue assurance challenges. And you have the option to either not vote or vote for none of the above. And I'll read the question again, which is, what do you expect to be your biggest challenge in launching platforms to serve new industries? And if we just wait a few seconds for everyone to finish voting, I think that has all calmed down. No, there's a little bit more. I think we're there now. And I'll ask Fergus to comment on the results. It looks like supporting pricing models for new services like M2M, cloud, and enterprise mobility is by far and away the most popular category. Fergus.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I would tend to agree with our audience there. That, as we know, is already a pain point, and one of those things that we beat ourselves up within telecoms for not being rapid enough to deploy new models. So we would expect that to be true as we're talking about deploying new models for customers. I see the number 2 is the billing accuracy and revenue assurance challenge. So again, I think the good thing is that telecom operators are aware of those challenges. They are aware of the gap that they need to fill to get there, to be able to do this. I think, again, many of the new players who are coming at this from different industries, they don't know what they don't know. Dan, would you like to comment on those results also?
Yeah, my comment would be the second one, supporting multi-party, partner-centric models. I think is more difficult than people believe these days. And you could have 10 or 15 partners in your channel, and one person takes the lead or is a lead contractor in one engagement, but in the next engagement, the telco takes a secondary role. So I think that is going to be a very big challenge going forward.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Let's move to some questions now. There's a few questions in, but there's still time, so do feel free to get your questions in, and I'll direct them to Dan or Fergus. We've got about just under 5 minutes left, so we'll try and rattle through that. Fergus, you mentioned that operators are often accused, partly by you, of not learning from the mistakes of the past. How applicable are the mistakes of the past in this arena, given that we're talking about telecoms operators that have traditionally dealt in selling speeds and feeds on capacity that they own, to becoming much more complex providers of a range of services? So how are the lessons of the past applicable in this new arena?
Right. I agree with you that telecom operators are, what they've been used to being selling are traditionally the communication services, and that's what they've excelled at. The move into the content space also generated revenue, but now at least the marketing hype and shine has gone off that to some extent, with players like Apple and all of the copiers of Apple have done a really good job of also capturing the content in the application space, and therefore leaving less of the pie for telecom operators. But however, I would differentiate between what are telecom operators good at selling and what are they good at building. And that's why, for my money, I think the smart strategy, not for all telecom operators, but for maybe a majority, and particularly some of the larger groups, would be to not have to go the whole hog in taking this to market, because the number of industries, as we've seen, and we've only touched on a few of them between Dan and myself, is actually very, very vast. And if we say, for example, HighTech Manufacturing, that's not a homogeneous industry. There's actually maybe 15, 20 individual sub-verticals under that, with different dynamics and different business challenges and different ways of rolling out services and different things potentially that they're going to want, and a whole different language to talk about this stuff. So building go-to-market forces within a telecom operator to go and speak to all these individual verticals, that's probably a losing proposition, because that's not competence that telecom operators have in-house. But I think that today, given what's already happened in terms of cloud services and what we've seen in terms of the way that you can put stuff up there with open APIs and allow third parties to have at it and to deliver value, that's a model I think has legs, is accepted, and that the telecom operators could adopt. So if you think about this as being, people call this a platform play, right? So
sure.
Take up all these new things I want to do, make it a platform. I don't have to worry so much about bringing it to market. Of course, I need reference customers, and some very, very high, big brand name customers are going to work with them very, very closely to have them using my platform. But then the mass of the market just comes and starts using it in very much a self-service mode. I don't have to worry about the go-to-market so much. So I'd really differentiate between the build piece and the sell piece.
So Fergus, do you see it more a case of operators providing the platform to a specialist solution provider in, say, the mining industry, who might provide a global mining company with a range of solutions enabled by an operator, so the operator doesn't have to go and sell to a mining company directly? Exactly,
yes. So it's exactly that model. I think that's the model we've also seen as being successful within the machine-to-machine space. So again, a sub-segment of everything that we're talking about here. Within the machine-to-machine space, most of the players there, they don't have the wherewithal to go to these different markets. So particularly, let's say, in the U.S. market, for example, with the M2M players, were not very, very large telcos to begin. They were individual little startups. So that's the approach they said. Let's create a platform and let then the specialist SIs, let the specialist sensor manufacturers, let them come in, use our platform to deliver service, and we end up getting a cut of the revenue flowing through.
Okay, so Dan, do you share that view, or do you think carriers and operators should attempt to swallow the whale and address every industry themselves?
Yeah, I think there are challenges because telcos have not been used to being a part of another company. They get their heads down with their network, and that's their strong suit. There have been other segments of the telco industry, for instance, the cable industry. They own entertainment networks. They're much more marketing savvy. So maybe these folks have got an advantage on that score. But one question I think that I would like to ask Fergus on this whole notion is SAP. I'm wondering, what is SAP's role going to be? How are you going to help enable telecoms to do? Maybe give us a hint of what you have in your bag of tricks there to help telcos do this.
Yeah, good question. So I think I'd answer that with two things. Number one, we're a software company, right? What we do is we sell software that allows you to do all this great stuff. So in many of the areas that we talked about here, so applications that you run in the cloud, enterprise mobility, the billing piece, the analytics piece, we could definitely have software that can answer the needs that these new companies are going to want, and we're very, very happy to go and talk to telecoms about that. That's number one. But I think the second thing that we can add is, as SAP, we have 24 industries that we know as well as we know telco, and we know telco very, very well. So we know the dynamics of what's happening within utilities. We know the dynamics of what's happening within high-tech manufacturing for consumer electronics in Taiwan. We know what's happening with semiconductor manufacturers. We know what's happening in the oil and gas industry. We know what's happening in retail and consumer packaged goods. So we know those dynamics. We know what those customers need. We know the types of business transformation they're trying to go through. And in many cases, we as SAP have helped them go through those types of transformation. For example, in automotive, the whole move towards lean manufacturing, just-in-time delivery, a lot of that was SAP helping those companies with our solutions, our industry-specific solutions to make those transitions. So that's, I think, also knowledge that when we are talking to telecoms that we bring to the table. We know the dynamics of these industries, and in some cases we're making the connections to help telecoms see the opportunities, and in some cases bringing people together to make that happen.
Okay, Fergus, thanks very much. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who joined and participated in the polling. And in particular, I'd like to thank our speakers, Fergus O'Reilly, Chief Solution Expert, SAP Consume to Cash at SAP Labs France, and Dan Baker, Research Director of Technology Research Institute. Thanks very much, gentlemen. I think it's been a stimulating discussion, and many thanks for your time. Thank you. Goodbye.